I was actually in Paris on a job when Princess Diana was killed, and I had just left the Ritz and gone to a different hotel because it was a documentary about these old school high end hotels, and we were there literally just an hour or two before she arrived, and she was killed that night.
You're listening to Old Guy Tech.
On today's show, we're breaking down the battle-tested logic of the owner-operator. We're talking about the FX9 and the C70, and why we still love the mummy cameras in our archives, and the business of surviving as a freelancer for 30 years without losing your mind or your knees. Let's get into it. I am Michael Samstag. I am joined by my good friend and co-host Dave McCauley. Dave, how are you?
I'm great, Michael. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. It's been a weird few weeks, but I'm excited about this show. I figure to get started, for those of us who don't know you, maybe you could tell us a little bit about kind of what you've been doing as a working DP operator and sort of what keeps you busy these days.
What keeps me busy these days is a variety of things. I've got a long history of working in cable television production for docudramas, documentaries, a lot of true crime. Lately, that has slacked off, though.
Are we not using the term murder porn, or is that an okay term in the industry?
You could totally use that term.
There happens to be a lot of that in Knoxville, that is for sure. A lot of true crime.
It's amazing how much of that has been produced out of Knoxville, Tennessee. A tremendous amount over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, probably 15 to 20 different series. One of them in particular just surpassed 700 episodes.
That's unreal. That's absolutely unreal.
I don't know if I should say their name or not.
I think you can. Most of this stuff is, if it's being aired on television, it's probably not too private.
But it's one of Kelly Ripa's favorite shows. Snapped.
Oh, yeah. Snapped. Snapped, Killer Couples, Snapped. There's all kinds of variations of Snapped now.
And Bill Hader talked about it a while back, too.
Well, that's funny. Yeah, a good friend of mine was involved with the pilot of that, of course, Dario.
Yeah.
So, and that was a long time ago. It's hard to believe that show's still going strong. So beyond broadcast cable stuff, what other kind of stuff have you been doing? And are you contract? Are you full day freelancer, or how does it typically work for you?
I am a full-time freelancer, typically contracted by a daily rate. Occasionally I'll do like a weekly rate.
Yeah.
Or something like that, but almost always it's a daily rate.
And are you typically just, whatever the production is shooting on, or are you getting hired as a package with your FX9?
Sadly, almost always whatever their production has.
Yeah, that stings.
About 5 to 10% of the time, which is not nearly enough, I get to use my own gear.
What's the reason for the FX9, and what type of stuff do you do when you're using your own gear?
The reason for the FX9 is because over the last 7 or 8 years, maybe longer than that, maybe 10 years, I've been using almost all Sony products on a variety of the work I've been doing. And I just made a decision that I wanted to go in and purchase an FX9 a couple of years ago, not foreseeing that they were going to discontinue that product.
Of course.
But yeah, typical of my product purchases. It's like, oh, this is a great camera. Let's discontinue it.
Yeah. Well, now, to be fair, though, the FX9 has been a workhorse. It's requested a lot. It's probably it's sort of the FS7 ruled for a decade, and now it just seems like this is the decade of the FX9, and maybe to some degree the FX6. And my gear of choice, the Canon lines, have been really, ever since the FS7, have just been kind of trailing behind. I do think that some of the Canon stuff right now is really, really come a long way and is as comparable. I think pretty much all the gear these days is so solid. It's hard to go wrong.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the days of chasing a particular model of gear just doesn't make any sense because everything is so balanced in terms of what the capabilities are. If you have a good set of glass and a good eye for lighting, then it doesn't matter what the camera body is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm in a slightly different situation than you in that I'm really kind of more of a producer editor. I like to say predator. I love that term. Most of the jobs that I go on, if I shoot for a day or two, that's great, but it's usually with a agency crew out of cruise control. Like, so I go to New York, we hire a DP and an audio guy, I shoot for a day or two, come back, and then I'll manage all that post, through delivery to the client. So it's pretty, I do maybe a handful, maybe a half a dozen or so shoots where I'm getting paid to use my gear. I have been a eBay camera purchaser for a long, long time, probably for 20 years at least, because I really never feel the need to bite the bullet on the newest, latest tech. But I will say I've been, as I kind of mentioned, I've been with the Canon since the AF1, so predating all of the original mirrorless stuff. And then
How many people actually know what that camera is?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's like the first of sort of the big sensor video cameras, really. Yeah, that goes way back. I don't even remember how long ago that was. But then I think probably 15 years ago, bought the C100, also used. It gets hired every once in a while. It got hired twice last year. And like, that to me was just like, okay, open up the door to the archive, blow off the dust and bring the mummy back. And that thing still makes a beautiful image. But I went through the 100. I had the C500, the original C500, C300 Mark II. And then I recently, we can talk about this as another whole full length conversation, but I did go through all of the Blackmagic stuff, the 4K and the 6K Pro. But I've now settled on the C70. And I'd say as a documentary filmmaker and someone who does corporate, high-end corporate, it's been a fantastic camera for me. So, but I have been accused of being a little bit of fickle when it comes to, it'll be the camera of the year choice. But I am going on 2 years with the C70 and we still have a very strong relationship and don't see that we'll be breaking up anytime soon. What are some of the other things that you've done? What are some of your favorite, what's kind of some of the work you're most proud of?
Oh, gosh. There was a time when I did a lot of documentary work for the History Channel,
Oh, nice.
and there was a show called The Vatican Revealed that was
Ooh,
for A&E. That was, personally, that was a fantastic job just because I got to go to Rome and go to the Vatican as part of
awesome.
that crew.
Yeah. How long were you in Rome?
I was there for about 2 weeks.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. The
Yeah, there were
Vatican
two
is
crews,
amazing.
the very small crews. It was just producer, camera, and audio, and they hired the audio locally, and we had a fixer
Of
that
course.
was great, appropriately named Mario,
Very nice.
and he was great though. He was a former CBS News a camera guy
Yeah.
that covered the Vatican, so
Awesome.
he was a perfect fixer.
Yeah. Fixers are another conversation, like a whole other conversation, because they can certainly, depending on the style of shoot, they can make or break a shoot. So what were you shooting on for this show? Do you remember?
I believe that was the Panasonic VariCam,
Oh yeah. Yeah. 720p at
and
its finest.
yeah.
Was it the P2 variant or the tape variant?
No, it was the tape variant,
Yeah, that's
the digital tape.
yes, I remember it well. HD cam and was the Sony variant, and what was it? I can't remember what it was. So, yeah, that's cool. What 2 weeks in the Vatican? That's awesome. I've been, but not behind the
Yeah,
scenes. So to be behind the scenes would be killer.
yeah, it was pretty amazing. There was a few things I was disappointed with. One was that the Sistine Chapel had the rights to the Sistine Chapel had been purchased by Sony, and they put a bunch of money into the restoration, but then they got all the video rights, the visual rights, I
Yeah,
guess. So we weren't allowed to go shoot that.
that's everything that's wrong with the corporate world in a nutshell, right there.
Right.
Awful. And what's your least favorite shoot or style of shoot been?
Least favorite style?
Yeah.
That's pretty easy. I'm not a big fan of reality.
Yeah.
I've done a few things and they were okay. One was animal related. That was pretty fun. It was called King of the Jungle.
Oh yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think
And
Jeff Reed
so
was on that with you, right?
yes, he was.
That goes way back.
Yeah, we shot down in South Carolina,
Yes, those people
and
are all in prison now.
I believe so, or at least some of them are.
It's an interesting tie-in to the Hidden Tiger, but actually I want to go back and say I have a Vatican-related story that I was involved in. This is funny. I used to be kind of the Knoxville guy for hard copy. Remember good old hard copy? And I love those guys. Those producers were all out of New York. They were all probably, my age then, probably in their, 50s or whatever. And they were fantastic. They knew what they wanted, get in, get out. You sent the tape via satellite to New York and then it was on air that evening. But it was the woman. So when the Pope was shot in the Vatican circle there, wherever it was, the bullet went through the Pope and hit a woman from Knoxville. And so she was seriously wounded. And this was, years after the fact, but it's like something had happened. So they were doing a story about, this woman who shared a bullet with the Pope. And I shot that with a producer from Hard Copy.
I never knew that.
Yeah, I did some fun stuff with Hard Copy. Like, I really liked working with him. It was, compared to some of the trash that's out now, it really wasn't a bad piece of, was it magazine broadcast, or I don't even know what that style's called anymore.
Right.
So
I think I did one gig with them, and it was, I think, in Upper East Tennessee or maybe even West Virginia, but it was a healthcare piece, and it was like a hit piece. So we basically stormed into a hospital, a small rural hospital, to try and interview this director, and it didn't go very well.
hit pieces are, that's another whole conversation in of itself too. Actually, our friend Jeff, he was not the Unabomber, but the bomber from the Olympics in Atlanta. What's his name?
Yeah.
The guy who was holed up in North Carolina. Jeff spent a long time on that, waiting.
That's right.
For him to be found and all that. So
Eric
Rudolph. That's what it was.
Rudolph.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did something again for Hard Copy where I think it was one of the last places where he had stayed before he'd gone in the woods, or maybe it was a different serial killer. But yeah, now I don't do really any of that stuff. I also say most of the way I work these days is, well, right now I don't do much at all. So quick personal aside, this is maybe a cautionary tale for young filmmakers out there, but this business can be brutal on your body, and enough years on your feet. Typically guys like us are going blind and may have back problems, knee problems. I have all those things, but I'm on the wait right now for a knee replacement. So, I can't, that's
a single knee or two knees?
Yeah, luckily just a single knee. I did sort of damage both my knees this most recent injury, which we'll save that for another time. So fortunately it's a single knee. And I'd injured it many times in my 20s. But so anyway, that's the reason for I have a renewed interest in podcasting, because I'm going to not be able to carry heavy gear around for at least a few months, if not longer. And really, like I said, most of what I do is high-end corporate stuff where, the most of what I'm doing is post. So, and that's another episode in itself too, because I love really the technology, especially as a DaVinci Resolve user. It just keeps getting better and better, and I really enjoy it. So that's a fun part of it. So
at what point did you go to DaVinci Resolve, and what did you come from?
Okay, that's an easy answer. I've done it all. So, I started on NLEs, pre-software NLEs, where they were kind of like hardware based, and I don't remember the name of them. I was on the original Discrete, I think it was called Edit, Discrete Logic, which is now Fire, Flame, and all the high-end. Actually, back then, it was even part of the DaVinci Resolve suite when DaVinci Resolve was, $750,000 system. And then my first software first software-based was Discrete Logic Edit. I went from that to Premiere 1.0. I was on the original version of Premiere. I went to Final Cut before X. I went through every version until X. From Final Cut, I jumped to Avid, and I was on Avid for a good long time. And then I made the switch to Resolve, and I still do have a fair amount of Adobe products that I still have to mingle with, mainly Photoshop and After Effects. So yeah, so I've really, and I still occasionally bounce. Some things pop up in Premiere every once in a while, but yeah, I'm a Resolve guy through and through, and I've loved it. So
I wonder how many people out there know. Well, it'd probably be younger people who wouldn't know that DaVinci originally was just a film scanning system.
Yep, that's
how they got their start.
We used the system for the Potter DVDs. So the workflow was unbelievable. We shot on 35, had dailies in London, and then the footage was sent to Atlanta to Crawford, where it was basically the film was scanned on Resolve and turned into TIFF frames, and the TIFF frames were brought into, I think it was a Fire Suite, to a discrete Fire Suite. All of these suites are like, I can't remember, it's $1,000 or $2,000 an hour. Like, it's just the most high end stuff, and it was a crazy workflow. But yeah, that was my first taste of Resolve, and now of course it's free. It's so it's a great system. And I will say this before we move on. I think having worked in all those systems, on all those NLEs, the difference with Resolve, forget the technology, forget everything. But if you look at the user base and the amount of information that's on YouTube, like as far as get help with absolutely anything, there's no comparison. It's such a robust group of people who are trying to help each other out and make the best content possible. And I love that. That's kind of, also, I will say this, like I have the studio version, so I got it free with a camera, right? So in theory, I paid $295 at some point many years ago, and I still use it. But when I call tech support, I talk to a human person, and it's not like, oh, we'll get back to you in a day. Like, they have tech support at the, paid $300 version level, which I find like stunning. Like, that's amazing for a piece of software that inexpensive. So anyway, yeah, I'm definitely a fan. We should say before we go on that probably the hallmark of this show, and again, it's early days, right? But we will also be featuring people that we've worked with in the past, people that we want to work with. And that's camera operators, DPs, audio people, just people who've worked in the business a long time. And I'll tell you that where the idea for the show came from for me, and we talked about this a lot, is I work with so many teams, production teams that I've never met before. And it's always, whether you're first time on set or whether you're in a corporate gig, so what have you worked on? Right? What are the coolest celebrities you've worked with? What are the nightmares? What's the best job you've had? The worst job you've had? Those like set stories, some of those are so good. And I've had a few, and you've certainly had a lot. So I just think a place to kind of share those like battle worn stories, and I hope and I believe that this stuff isn't going away. There's a lot that AI is going to change, but the need for humans to go out there and tell other stories of other humans or other robots or whatever, it's still going to be out there. So I think there's always going to be a need. It takes a long time to get from that level where every production is like a shit your pants productions, where you're nervous the night before, you don't sleep at all. You're just worried about how you have imposter syndrome during the whole shoot. And then when it's over, you just think, I'll never get hired again. I don't know what's going to happen. So what's that? So is that
me?
That ring?
That's me.
Well, I mean, I'll say this, like I am in the point where I don't feel that way anymore. Right. So there are very few jobs where I haven't done it 1,000 times before, and I don't have the nerves like I used to. That's for sure. The nerves now are still, I'll say it. I'm like be 58, and surviving as a freelancer, as a small business owner, is still brutal. Like I am getting better at it, and this will definitely be a part of the show. Is kind of the business of the business, right? Invoicing and pricing, and dare I say it, taxes, right? These are things that, man, they're not teaching you at film school, and I think it's important to know up front. So I think that's part of the show. I think there's a gear tech piece to it, but like this will never be an unboxing, and I did an unboxing yesterday, but I didn't film it. So I have a new piece of tech that will not have anything to do with anything. but I'm still buying things every once in a while. But I really do think that smart tech purchases are, if it doesn't last for 5-10 years, it wasn't a good purchase. So what's in your gear bag? What's your desert island kit? What's your gear regret? Right? Those, I think that's part of the show, the business of it. I think it'll be interesting to talk to people about AI because it's not coming, it's here. So, and it's already
here.
It's already affecting jobs. It's already, I mean, good grief, look at Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta went from Hollywood East to nothing. I mean, the studios are essentially closed. And that is thousands of people that are out of work. Yeah, somewhere I think the show is a blend of all these things, but I think it'd be fun to talk to people that we've worked with and love working with, and people that we want to work with. And then also, like, if someone has some fun stories to share, like, I think leave a comment in the notes, and we'd love to reach out to you and record your stories or take questions from viewers about the business, about gear, about anything. So does that sound like kind of what the show we talked about is still? I know it changes a lot.
I think that's very accurate. The one thing that you discussed that I think is absolutely true is that everybody has a story.
Yeah.
I always ask crew members that I've never worked with before, how did you get started? Because everybody's story is different.
Yeah.
I don't think I've met two people over the course of my entire career that had the exact same story as to how they got started.
All right. So that's a perfect segue. How'd you get started?
Okay. I thought I wanted to be in radio.
Isn't that interesting? And here we are.
I don't know. Yeah, right. And here we are making a podcast. I thought I wanted to be in radio for some reason. And there was this little technical school in Knoxville that had, their claim to fame was that a guy named Phil Williams went there. He's a longtime radio host, DJ in Knoxville.
Yeah.
They had a broadcasting program and a nursing program. And I think there were 60 or so students total between both programs.
Cool.
It was a tiny place. It was down off Ayler Avenue. So I got there, went to the school. They just happened to have this new instructor came in, and he was very gung ho and was trying to have us do lots of different unique things. And I quickly decided I wanted to be in television, not radio. So about 2 weeks after I graduated, this guy calls me from the school and says, "Hey, this ad agency is looking for a PA or an intern or just somebody to do all the gopher work."
Yeah.
And he said, "Call him right away." And so I called him, and 2 hours later, I had a job.
Wow. Where was that?
That was Robertson Russell Advertising.
All right. Not
They
familiar
did
with it.
a bunch of regional automotive advertising. And they had several people on staff that were really good at what they did. One was Phil Hardison.
Oh, man. Yeah.
He had graduated from film school out of Cincinnati, and Tom Baker was there doing all the audio work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Jeez.
and they had a creative director named Colin Gentry, who became a longtime friend away from work.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got my start.
Well,
and they shot a lot of 16 and 35 millimeter film, and started learning how to become an AC.
Well, it's funny. We were talking about both Phil and Tony the other day, and how sad it is, how much the community misses them. It's very strange to think that they're gone. But my favorite tie-in Tony Carapi story was working on the third Harry Potter movie. And to be clear, I worked on special features for the DVDs. But the DP was, oh my God, I'm blanking out right now. Roger Deakins. Sorry, that's a bad one to forget. So, and Roger was lovely. I had just met him.
Who was that guy?
Right. Yeah. Roger Deakins. I don't know.
Roger who?
Yeah. So anyway, at one point there was a chance I just said, "Hey, a funny story, but we have a friend in common." And he goes, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, Tony Carapi." And he goes, "Tony Carapi?" Are you kidding me? And, those guys were roommates in college at NYU.
Really?
And that's how he got on.
I did not know
I
that.
think that's how, I don't remember if it was Green Mile. I can't remember which he was. It was his, first big set job for Tony. It was because of Roger. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean,
I know that Tony worked on Fargo.
yeah. Yeah. Well, so he kind of, because
I mean, multiple.
Well, the Deakins, the Coen brothers, Deakins was their DP of choice for almost every single film.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's kind of why he kind of got to do that jump. And back in the day, that probably was not very glamorous. Like working on a Coen brothers film before they were the Coen brothers was just working probably for a little bit of money on a cool set. So
right,
I doubt it. I doubt it was glamorous like it would be now anyway. So. Yeah, funny, the industry connections, and it's weird to be in that position too. Like I just, it's the things that we've worked on sometimes. So when I think of all of the cool things that you get a chance to do by taking on a role in this field, it's really like as difficult as it can be at times. And as sometimes it can be great, but those productions that give you the access to go do things that you would never have the chance to do otherwise, that's like as good as money for me. Like I know for me, like travel, I've traveled through Southeast Asia and been able to, spend summers in Europe and Zurich, and that stuff is just makes it all worthwhile. What's your most?
I totally agree with that. The travel is a huge part of it.
What's the coolest?
If you get that opportunity.
Yeah. What's the coolest trip abroad that you've done for a job?
I'd probably the Rome trip.
Yeah, that'd be hard to beat.
But I've been to Paris also. I was actually in Paris on a job when Princess Diana was killed.
Oh, man.
And I had just left the Ritz and gone to a different hotel because it was a documentary about these old school high-end hotels. And we were there literally just an hour or two before she arrived, and she was killed that night.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah, that's...
Yeah, and immediately we were labeled as paparazzi.
Of course. Yeah.
Next day. Yeah.
Yeah. And that changed the industry terms and the way that goes for sure. So my royal family story is very different than yours, but I was at Tesla in Texas, the Gigafactory, when the Queen died. But then a couple hours, actually, was it before or after? I think it was after that we found out the Queen had died. But we were there I was producing an interview with Elon Musk. So that was a very, very cool day. Not sure if I'm supposed to talk about that or not, but I won't mention the company or anything like that. So hopefully we're okay. And then I'll tell you the luckiest day I've ever had in London was, again, this was for the Potter movies. I spent kind of a winter break and 2 summers in London doing the movies. And I can't remember, I think it was the second trip. Anyway, they gave us a sort of travel day to recover from. And it was, so you travel on Sunday, you have Monday off, and then Tuesday, you go to Leavesden, you report on duty. And Monday was the Queen's Golden Jubilee. And it kicked off from Buckingham Palace. So, I figured, what the hell, I got to try to stay awake anyway. So I basically took the tube down to Buckingham Palace. I got there was like, I don't know, a few thousand people there, because I was there maybe an hour or two, a couple hours early. By the time the thing started, which that was, Paul McCartney, Queen, Brian May playing on top of Buckingham Palace, and it was a massive, massive show. By the time the show had started, they were all the way back to Trafalgar Square. There was 1 million people, I think. They were there watching the show, and there was nobody between me and Buckingham Palace. I was just holding on to those iron gates. And when the Queen came to light the fireworks at the end,
life, I'm sure.
Oh man, it was great. It was the most like, you couldn't hear the band when they were playing Beatles songs because the audience was louder than the band. I mean, it was amazing. But the Queen, when she came to light the fireworks, she was behind me, and then the big pyrotechnic thing went right by my feet, and then the fireworks started on the castle. So that was a cool travel day. But I will say, most interesting travel, that's a kind of like a showy kind of, it's like travel story. But we did get to go to both India and Nepal to film tigers in the wild for the hidden tiger. And man, there's nothing like that. That was a cool experience. What's your biggest set disaster that you've had to work through?
In terms of tech, well, right off the top of my head, I can say that right after COVID, started doing a lot of Zoom interviews.
Yes.
And so I was on location with the person being interviewed and an audio tech, and a producer was there via Zoom. And multiple times had Zoom problems, Zoom issues, a variety of things like that would be a problem. And I ended up oftentimes just using my phone,
Yep.
sometimes put the phone on speaker and just lay it in front of the person. And
Yeah.
then I would sit in the producer's chair and have them talk to me, answer to me.
Sure.
That's not a huge thing, but it's frustrating when you're talking to some victim's mother and you can't make this work. And it just, it's not funny, but in hindsight, it's like, why do we do this to ourselves?
I think the saddest thing of that story is actually that Zoom and all of these platforms are still being used so frequently for what used to be really high-end video work that still just looks terrible. Very big conferences for large companies using, Zoom and the likes to film their executives that can't make it to a meeting or to do an opener or something like that. That is by the time that's getting ready to go away, they'll be replaced by very lifelike avatars. And so some of that work
Exactly.
is always going to be, or, may still be at risk. I'm trying to think, like, I think I could say the worst tech problems for me still to this day, and it happens to everyone, doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, but like
The double tap, yes.
the double tap is the worst thing that can happen. Now, I will say, if you catch it right away, you look great, right? That's no big deal. But if you don't catch it, man, that is the worst. So, having that backup system so you have something is nice, although that's really one of the hardest ones to prevent against. The biggest tech disaster that I've had is we were shooting at basically Top Gun, Miramar in San Diego during an air show. I was there for the Red Baron Squadron. We did a lot of work with them. And we were shooting on the F900. So the original HD cam, this was a little bit later, but originally when I was at iPix, we had gotten the prototype from Lucasfilms. And, this was like right after the original third Star Wars, fourth Star Wars. I'm not very good with the Star Wars references. Apologies. But anyway, so we're shooting around some like Raptor F-19, 16, 8, some giant fighter plane that was, just kind of parked and you could walk around it kind of thing. And they had those giant cable minders down. And so I was kind of shooting, and then I just totally wrecked on the cable minder. And I caught myself with the F900, rolled over the camera, hopped back up. The eyepiece was just flopped off to the side and dangling. And it recorded for a little while, and then it stopped. My AC, Jim Adams, this guy, tech freaking guru. So we were able to get the viewfinder back on, but literally he did all the things you're not supposed to do. Unscrewed all the things that say, do not unscrew this or you void the warranty. Unscrewed it all, took out every circuit board. And the F900 at the time was, I don't know, probably 12 circuit boards just crammed in there. Took them all out, unseated them, seated them back in there, screwed the thing back together, and it worked. So fortunately for insurance, it was a very expensive job. Like the camera worked at that point, but like fixing all the physical damage on it and whatever factory service they had to do was expensive. But again, woohoo, production insurance saved us on that one. I think I was only out of pocket, maybe $500 or $1,000. I don't even remember.
Wow.
But yeah, I rolled a F900. That was a $95,000 camera then.
Yeah.
Blurf. Yeah.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion about the price point of a camera body then versus now.
Oh, it's crazy.
So the Panasonic VariCam, it had a common reoccurring problem with the boards becoming loose, and you would have to take the side off, pull out 5 or 6 boards, and pop them back in, just
Ugh.
like you said, in order for the camera to turn on and work properly. So it would get shipped out to a job, and one of the first things you'd have to do is take it apart, reseat the boards, put it back together. That became an ongoing thing for one particular client of mine.
That's terrifying. That's terrifying. I actually, a funny similar story, because I had, at that point, I had the Vericam and the F900. We were in, these are all my showy stories. We were in Cancun for MTV Spring Break 2001. I had interviewed Snoop Dogg and a few other things. Well, now, okay, yes, that does sound glamorous, and in some degree it was, but also shooting on the beach is shooting on the beach, and shooting on the beach sucks. 2 very heavy cameras. Anyway, we were there, and we were breaking down our cameras for the day, and the crew from Wild On came up to us, and I don't know why they thought that we knew what we were doing, but I guess the fact that we were shooting on 2 brand new cameras and they had beta cams, 45-pound beta cams. Anyway, Wild On, you remember the show? Like, it was like spring break extravaganzas all over the world. So anyway, they wanted to see if we would help them fix one of their beta cameras that had gotten broken and couldn't. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll let you guys borrow one of our HD cams. But if to do that, I have to come with you. I get to shoot on the F900, and I think both of our photographers get to come. Anything we shoot along the way, we get to keep, have full access to, and then I'll help you get the footage transferred from, because nobody had Vericam or any of that stuff back then. So I'll get you the footage in some sort of standard F footage that you can deal with for the broadcast. And they said, sure. And the things that we saw, because anytime Wild On was there, it was like Gary Busey's son was one host, and it was a Playboy model was the other host. And they'd flip on the camera light, turn the camera on, and people would just go insane. I saw things, Dave, I saw things. I will say, I always said, if I ever had a daughter or even a son, like never spring break. They will never, ever, ever go to be a part of spring break. Because, this was 25 years ago, and it was shocking, the things that were happening. So yeah. Luckily, I will say these days, gear is pretty solid. Like it's the tech problems are usually, not necessarily camera based more as they are like batteries going out and just kind of the typical stuck in an elevator, late, traffic, those kinds of things which come up so frequently. So
thought of one of the worst things actually that happened. And it was just me personally. I was an AC on a music video shoot over in Nashville. They were shooting on 35 millimeter film, and we were out by a lake somewhere, and I was the loader, and they had just handed me a fully shot 400-foot roll. I go in the bag and load the new roll of film into the magazine.
Yeah.
And then I open the bag before I close the can lid
of the shot.
On the shot roll.
Did you expose?
Pulled it out and looked at it and was like, put it back in, closed it up.
And then fell on a sword?
I was in a darkened truck.
Man.
Like a big box truck.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that dark.
Yeah.
So I had to go to the first AC and tell him what happened. And he told the DP, and they basically reshot everything that they had just shot.
Thank God it was only a 400-foot roll.
Yeah.
Imagine
some on 35, that was like
still expensive. Yeah.
Was that like 7 minutes worth or something?
Yeah. That's not a lot of time to reduce that. That could have been worse, but still, man, that feeling.
It was terrible.
Just nothing worse. Like I'll say this, I'm lucky too. Like most of my mistakes I pay for, right? So if I make a mistake in production and I'm editing it, I can find a way around it. And I think that's kind of what makes, that's what makes me a good producer, right? So when I'm working with other people, it's like, no, I know what I got. I know, people who don't know, maybe we should do this, maybe we should, that drives me crazy as a camera operator, just working with an indecisive producer. That could be another whole segment too, like producers who drive you crazy. Like basically wrapped in like, oh wait, I know what we should shoot. No, that time has come and gone. So
yeah, I got a couple of good stories about that too.
well, look, I think this has been awesome, and this would be where we'd normally tease what's happening in the next episode. I can say I've got a lot of people that I work with in New York that I've been working with for a long time. These are really, really great, hardworking crew guys who've seen it all, and I'm hoping to talk them to be a guest for our next show, and be thinking about who you might like to have on, and also for our viewers, if there are any, certainly, like I said, leave a note in the comments if you know someone who would be cool to have on, or if you yourself would like to be on. And I thank you, Dave, for agreeing to do this with me. And thank you to the viewers.
Thank you for getting it started.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, we'll see you on the next one.
Sounds great. See you then.